we going once, going twice. Okay, we should be recording this session starting from now. So I think we will talk to Winnie when I guess we can continue. So I would definitely want to introduce the panel for today so that you're able to engage as to who we are talking with. If you look at the chat line, I've already just made a very short your bio in regards to some of the key speakers, and I'll continue putting them out there. So the first we have on the panel is David Njagi, who's a Kenyan journalist with over 12 years of experience in reporting, photojournalism, and science journalism. Quite heavy lifting there in terms of his experience. He's contributed to a lot of leading media outlets, Nation, The Star, international platforms, from BBC, Devex, Mongabe, African Climate Wire, and all that. So you can already see we're speaking to people who have profound knowledge in terms of what they're talking about. He's also a member of Foreign Press Association and the Environment Science Association of Freelance Journalists in Kenya. David, if you've joined us, at least acknowledge and say hello so that we know you're there. Say hello, even if it's on the chat, so that we know you're there. I can see you.
Hello,
okay,
everyone.
Okay, fine.
I'm here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We shall talk to you. Jackson Okata is a Nairobi-based award-winning journalist with over 8 years' experience across broadcast, print, and digital media. He reports on agriculture, environment, gender, politics, technology. He's also a fellow of several global media organizations, including Health Journalism Network, Earth Journalism Network, Internews, ACME, and Journalists for Human Rights, and the Thomas Reuters Foundation. Jackson, also acknowledge you with us so that we can be able to know you're lined up. I can see you even if it's a text message. Just carry on.
I'm here. Thank you.
And I can see the chat. Yes. Oh, thank you, Jackson. I can see the chat from Winnie. She says she's in a noisy place. We will get back to you, Winnie, later on so that you can talk to us. We also have Lenah. Lenah is also joining us. Lenah Bosibori is an award-winning journalist celebrated for impactful storytelling, recognized at AJAIA Awards by Media Council. This is 2023. She covers various critical topics from health, environment, agriculture, gender, human rights, and climate change. And she's contributed to so many publications from the Vaccine Alliance, InfoNile, Africa Science, People Daily, KBC Digital, Kenya Farmer Journal. Wow, quite in-depth coverage in terms of the issues. So again, Lenah, we would want to recognize you and just say hello if you're on board.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So the other person that we shall introduce, oh, sorry, he's not joining us, but we were supposed to have Christian Locka all the way from Cameroon, but he's not feeling well. We wish him a quick recovery. Thereafter, we also have Steve Buist, who's a retired investigative journalist, feature writer at the Hamilton Spectator newspaper. He retired as one of Canada's most decorated journalists. I love the word decorated, having won and been nominated for nearly over 100 awards at the national, international, and provincial levels during his career. Wow, I don't know what else to say. He's also been named Canada's Investigative Journalist of the Year award 3 times, and is a 2-time winner of the prestigious Hillman Prize, Social Justice, and a 2-time nominee for Canada's Maker Award for Public Service Journalism. It's an honor. He's also an honorary doctorate by university in Canada. It's really an honor to have you on board. Hello, say hello wherever you are joining us from. Steve?
Hello. I'm here. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We will definitely be talking to you in a while. And then I think the last 2 persons is Catherine Muema. Catherine is the program manager at ACOS Alliance. She develops and implements global programs for activities, including safety training for journalists and online projects, resources in terms of newsroom, also enabling a culture of safety within the working practice, and also setting out basic standards for freelance journalists in terms of how we go about with our work. Catherine, welcome on board, and would want to acknowledge you. Are you around with us?
Thank you, Carol. Yes, and hello, everyone.
Okay, thank you. And the last but not least is Raquel Seco. Raquel is the deputy editor of Planeta Futuro, the global development news desk for newspapers. Raquel, are you with us?
Hello, everyone.
Are you around?
Hi, can you hear me?
Acknowledge Venon.
Hi.
Yes.
Yes, hi,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you so much. So we shall thank you. It's good to see that all the panelists are around, and thank you for everybody who's joining us, even at this point in time, from wherever you are. We really appreciate the effort to be in. So we'll start us off in terms of understanding how to pitch and sell content as a freelance. And I will start us off with David, and then we can be able to take off to Jackson. Each one of you will be able to do like 6 minutes, and then we can be able to talk to the others. So David, we're ready for you. And the chat room is open for questions and sessions. David.
Hello. Hello.
Hey, we can hear you.
Hey.
Yes, we can hear you. Just go ahead.
Yeah, just to go into our discussion today, I just want to start with a disclaimer that there's no standard way on maybe how one should pitch a story to an editor. It just depends on maybe you trying different ways and trying different ways and seeing what can work for you, because people are different tastes, and so too are editors. But just for the basics, that maybe first you need to know the outlet and the editor you are pitching to. You need to know what kind of topics they cover. Try to read their work and understand maybe their style, what they are looking for, and also try to create a connection by first acknowledging them for the maybe some work they have done in the past, and why maybe you feel maybe your pitch would also add value to the kind of work they do. Then also
Kindly mute your mic. Elizabeth.
Okay, then also one of the best thing you need to be on the lookout for is just start with a compelling subject line or a top line. I mean a punchy top line. If maybe you're pitching this story, in very few words, what would the story be about? So just summarize what would be in your story in just a simple punchy top line. Then the hook is always important in a pitch, because if you've decided this is a story, you need to convince the editor why this matters now. Like for instance, you can start with maybe a start that is surprising, or maybe a quote that is catchy, and it's part of maybe clearly explaining the story and why the story is relevant at this moment and what the main idea would be. Then also you need to convince the editor why this story would be a good fit for the publication's audience. there's also the issue of, you need to have a reporting plan. Who just include in your pitch who your sources would be, maybe the location from where you'll be reporting from. You need also to, outline whether what kind of format the story will be at. Is it like maybe a text feature story, a video story? Okay, for me, I do in text. So, yeah, would it be a feature story? Then you also include how many words would it be? And also, you need to tell the editors when you are likely to deliver that piece of work. And also, some editors request that like that a pitch maybe will be included by photos. You need to say whether you provide photos or not. Yeah. Then also important is you need to keep your pitch short. Editors don't have time to go through the pitches. I know some publication like Mongabe, they require you to do a contextual pitch. They say you can go up to 500 words, but it's important to maybe summarize your pitch in, 4 to 6 paras that maybe capture the whole, what would be the story about. Then also, it's important also to include your portfolio in the pitch so that at least they get an idea of what kind of work you've been doing, your experience, the kind of narrative style you use for writing. And also, another important thing is that you need to include a line or two about yourself, who you are, a short bio, yeah, and maybe why you are good, you're the best person to write the story. So others you just learn while you're into the profession. So back to you.
Okay. Thank you, David. Of course, I'm recapping most of the comments that are coming out on the chat line as we go along. And also keep your questions coming. We'll have a session for that. I want to be able to give it off the mic to Jackson now so that you can also speak into any organization that you know that is currently also looking for pitches. That would be helpful for the people engaged online. Go ahead.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you everyone for finding time to be part of this conversation. So I'll just speak briefly about how we can identify where to place our pitches. So as David mentioned, first you have to know where you stand. What is your niche? Because that will help you in identifying where you can place your pitch. So first, you have to identify your pitch. If you are an environment and climate reporter, your focus should be looking out for calls from editors who deal with that particular niche. If you are science or health or human rights, it will depend on what where your strength lies. So there are quite a number of ways in which you can, as a freelancer, you can use to know who wants a story at what particular time. So if you are an environment reporter, of course, be on the lookout and read what publications in that particular space are publishing. So you can go to Mongabe or wherever, if you are an environment or climate reporter, and they will always put updates out there, be it on the social media, whenever they are in need of stories. So be on the lookout, especially on social media. LinkedIn and X are very, very rich platforms for any freelancer to source for or to access these calls from editors. So LinkedIn is, for me, all my stories or all my my pitches. Most of them, I do source them or I do learn on them on LinkedIn. So for me, LinkedIn is a very, very rich profile or rich source for for calls on pitches. So be on the lookout on LinkedIn and X. Those are the most used platforms by editors. Also, when pitching, I would advise, as opposed to pitching directly to a publication, it is good to pitch to a specific editor, because you would realize most publications have editors for specific sections. So as opposed to pitching directly, to the organization or to the publication, it is good to establish a connection with a specific editor so that you can directly pitch to that editor. It makes it easier even for responses to come through from an editor, as opposed to when you're dealing with when you're pitching through the publication's channels. So apart from following editors on their socials, because they place their updates on frequently. Also, be an avid reader, which publication is interested in or what they are publishing at that particular time, because some publications, they have a schedule of publication. Some organizations or some publications, they have a schedule of publications. So say between January and April, they have specific topics that they are focusing on. Between May and August, they have specific topics they are focusing on. So if you don't read their work, then you will not be able to know what they are looking for. Again, reading their work gives you an idea of what kind of stories they need. It gives you an idea of how you can structure your pitches. So read what these publications are publishing. That gives you an idea of what to publish. I will just mention a few other ways where which you can use to know where to pitch. So for any freelancer, there's a site called Freelancing with Team. Though it's subscription based, but Freelancing with Team gives you a lot of information, a lot of tips for those who are starting, those who are established, how to pitch, where to pitch, what to avoid, how to negotiate for rates. Freelancing with Team is a very, very rich platform for any freelancer. Then we have Freedom with Writing. So Freedom with Writing, you'll have to subscribe. Then weekly, they will send you a newsletter of all opportunities, freelancing opportunities, calls from editors. So depending on your niche, they'll be landing in your inbox weekly. They send a weekly newsletter with so many opportunities for freelancers. So you can go through, scan through, and you can't miss one or two where you can place your pitch. Then we have another platform called Where to Pitch. So Where to Pitch, basically you can just Google it. Then once you land on that page, so it will ask you the specific niche that you are looking for. So if you are an environment reporter, just key in climate or environment, then it gives you a list of all the publications that accept pitches for that particular niche. If you are a health reporter, do the same. It has a whole list of publications where you can place your pitches, and even it goes ahead to give you, contacts to the editors for those particular publications. Then we also have the Open Notebook. The Open Notebook is also a rich resource for any freelancer there. A lot of tips and resources that can help you, build your freelancing career. Then we have IJNet, of course, IJNet, the International Journalists Network. also lists a lot of opportunities for freelancers, be it trainings, fellowships, grants, others, pitching opportunities. IGNet is also a very rich resource. Then lastly, we have I-79 Media Consults, I-79 Media Consults. It's based in West Africa, but also has so many opportunities for freelancers, from grants, fellowships, trainings, what else? Pitching opportunities or calls from editors. I-79 Media Consults is also a very, very rich platform for any freelancer out there. I think I leave it at that. I will be back for the second input. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackson. I hope I've gotten some of the names right. Please go to the chat room and correct me if I haven't gotten it right. But for anybody who's joining us, the chat room is open. We are discussing opportunities in terms of freelance journalism. And of course, we've been having David, Njagi, and now Jackson Okata. And we will go on to Lenah, Bosibori, and then we can shift gears to the international platform. So Lenah, sorry, go ahead. We're waiting to hear from you.
Hi again. I think Jackson has mentioned all that I had. The only part I will love to tackle is whether I have received rejections from editors. Yes, I have received a couple of rejections from editors while in this business of pitching, and how to handle them, the feedback. As David said, most of these editors are very busy. So even getting emailing them back to get feedback on where you went wrong, sometimes get very difficult. Somebody speaking?
Please
Mutembi, mute yourself. Okay. Okay, as I was saying, getting editors one-on-one or on email to tell you where you went wrong while you are pitching your idea is very difficult, because David mentioned that editors are very busy and they handle so many emails on a daily basis. So for me, how I have been able to handle feedback is maybe to continue pitching to them, or sometimes I Google online and see some webinars or how I can pitch. Google has everything that one needs. Like Jackson mentioned, you can learn on YouTube. Many webinars were done during COVID on pitching. I remember attending one by Witwatersrand University in South Africa. They took us through on pitching, okay, for them, because now they require long form pitches. And at some point I realized on their website, they have samples of pitches that have gone through their system. That's when I learned on how to pitch to them directly through the samples. So some, like their website has like 3 samples one can go through, and it can give an overview of how they need their pitches look like. And also nowadays with technology, you can also Google. AI is in handy with us and is here to stay. So you can also check on AI using maybe ChatGPT on how to pitch to editors, because they are different and they require different pitches. There are some who want simple pitches. There are some, as David said, there are some with long form. So AI also can help one to improve on the pitching. And also when I have received many rejections from International Women's Media Network Foundation, that is. And a friend of mine, while I was sharing with her, she told me that at some point, she also used to receive so many rejections, but at some point, she emailed them back and asked them, where do I go wrong? And they were able to take her through her pitch until nowadays. She tells me that she's doing it at a fee. You can sit with her. She takes you through on how you can pitch to international. Of course, that's for women in the house. I learned through her, though I haven't tried it, but soon I'm looking forward to also ask them in the email. Another thing that I wanted to add is, okay, I've said on their websites also. Jackson mentioned on IJNet. Some stories are also done there on how to pitch to editors. I've read a couple of stories on IJNet on pitching. So one can also check their website and learn 1 or 2, 3 things from there. Another thing was what editors look for. In a nutshell, is like maybe just do a research before you start pitching, as my colleagues have earlier said. Back to you, Carol.
Thank you, Lenah. I hope we're all seeing the variety of experiences that the freelance journalists are bringing on board. You know, Jackson on one hand tells us this is where to pitch, but Lenah tells us, hey, it's not that easy. You might as well get a lot of rejection, but how do you deal with rejection? Just like even at a personal level, you know, when you're applying for work, there's so many rejections that we get. So we know we cannot be able to give up. And thanks, Lenah, for that. And I hope that we are learning, but I'm seeing the chat room is quite quiet. Please get the comments coming on board so that we can have a wonderful conversation. But before that, we get onto that open session, I want to shift gears to the international platform. We have Steve and then we have Raquel. So Steve, go ahead and share to us what editors look for and also your international experience as well.
Okay, thanks very much. So I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to share with you, if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Hopefully this will work. Can you see that?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, good. Let me turn it into a slideshow here. How's that? Yes? Good?
Yes. Good, good
Okay.
now.
Okay, good. All right, so here we go. So I'll try to tell you a little bit about good storytelling. I guess the first thing that I would stress is that every good story begins with a good idea. So my advice to you would be spend a decent amount of time trying to perfect your story idea, okay? Because if you don't have a good story idea, you could be the greatest writer in the world, but that's not going to save you, okay? So you need to really think about the story idea, think about what makes it interesting. And then, of course, as others have said, then think about how you convince somebody of your brilliance, okay? So the other thing that I would say when you're thinking about your story idea is that the more original your idea is, or the more original the data is that you might be working with, then the better the project, okay? And let me just, sorry, I got to get rid of something here. There we go. So the other thing that you need to think of is what type of story are you writing or are you producing? So are you writing a general news story? Are you writing a feature? Or are you producing a feature? Is it entertainment? Is it investigative? Is it data-driven? So you need to have that in your mind when you're thinking about your story idea, and then you're thinking about your pitch that follows from that, because you have to have in your mind what it is that you're trying to sell. And that will determine the type of approach that you take to writing your story. So if you're writing a news-based story, you know, that's going to influence the way that you pitch that story. And same as you go through this list here. So have that in the back of your mind when you're thinking about your idea and then the pitch that's going to flow from that idea. And then you have to think about what's the medium that works best for your story. So is print or like online text, is that the best medium for your story? Is it video? Is it audio? Is it some combination? I would suggest to you that in this day and age, the answer is always going to be a combination, that it's best to come up with more than one way to try to present your story. So think about not just the text part, but could you add in an audio component to it in the form of a short podcast, for example? Or could you do a short video that goes with your with your text. So think about, the best medium, but also additional media that could go with your story or your pitch. And then you need to also think about the other ways that you can add value to your idea and your story. So how can you best illustrate what you're about to present? Does that mean that you have charts that might work, graphs, tables, like spreadsheet type tables, maps, interactive graphics, interactive maps, a podcast? So think about all of the little extras that you can add in to really make your idea or your pitch stand out. So, because the reason I'm telling you this is that I was an editor for many years here in Canada. And like every other human being on earth, as an editor, people will take the path of least resistance. Okay. And as we say here in Canada, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Okay. So, editors, if they have a choice, they will be like every other human being. They're lazy. They don't want to have to do any work. Okay. And if you're constantly in front of their faces, if you're constantly the person saying, hey, I'm right here, hello, think of me, here's my idea, that's a long way towards success, is just constantly being in front of somebody because they want to take the path of least resistance. So give them a complete package. So a great idea, a good story, what your story is about, how it's going to be written, whether it's a news story or a feature or an investigative piece, or whether it's a data package. You've added some other elements like video and audio and some maps and a graphic and maybe a podcast. You put that whole package together and you're constantly in front of that editor's face. And eventually, I tell you, I was an editor, you'll wear that person down. And then the advantage of that is that then the next time that they're looking for something, they're going to remember you because you were that person who was there in front of their face all the time, giving them what they wanted, giving them a full package. And then it becomes easier because, as I said, they'll take the path of least resistance. So, make an editor's life as easy as you possibly can. So make it so that they have no choice but to say yes to you and your idea and your pitch. So the other thing you need to think about, obviously, is who is the target audience for your story. Are you writing or are you producing a piece for the general public? Are you producing it for academics? A business publication or a business audience? Are you producing this for a foreign publication? Because all of these things will influence how you write your story, but also how you pitch it. And you should be thinking about this, because the way that you would write a story or produce a piece for the general public is not going to be the same as the way you would write it or produce it for an academic audience or a scientific publication, right? For those, you can be much more specific with your language. You can be much more technical in your approach, okay? So you need to think about who it is that's going to be consuming your product, okay? And make sure that you produce that product that, ticks the boxes for your consuming audience. So, you need to figure out that way to make your story idea relevant to your target audience. So the best ideas, when you're thinking about your idea, your story pitch, what you want to do, the best ideas typically have a specific issue with broad interest. Okay. So by specific issue, I mean, whatever it is that you're going to be dealing with in your story, it has a clear focus. It's not too spread out. It's not too general. It's something that's easy for readers and viewers to grasp. okay? So you want a specific issue and you want it to have broad interest, okay? So that means that lots of different types of people will be interested in your idea or your story. It's not just going to be something that appeals to a very niche audience or a small group. Okay. So when you're thinking about your idea or your story or what you want to do, always think about the big picture, all right? What is it that readers and viewers care most about? And I will tell you that there are 5 categories of things that readers care and viewers care most about. So the first is money and power, okay? And by power, I'm including politics and politicians, okay? Health, and that could be their own health, the healthcare system, medical news, okay? Safety and security, that's just fancy words to talk about crime and justice. Business, and with business, I also include in there the labor force and labor rights, and the environment. And by that, I'm including climate and climate change. So these are the 5 main things that readers and viewers care most about in their lives, okay? So when you're thinking of an idea for your story, think about how you can fit it into these 5 main areas. How do these 5 areas touch on your idea? How can you get your idea to emphasize some of these main things, okay? So then as you're thinking about these 5 main areas of interest and how they fit your idea, then think about the kinds of things that trigger emotions in people, all right? So these are things like inequality, deprivation, greed, injustice, corruption, power imbalances, waste and mismanagement, crime, abuse, lack of responsiveness or failure to take responsibility, systemic failures, okay? These are the kinds of things that when people hear about them, it triggers emotions in people, all right? So you take that big picture area of interest, those 5 things, those 5 areas, money, health, safety and security, and then you look at it through the lens of these things that trigger emotions in people, okay? And then you try to marry those 2 things together, okay? So then you look back, you step back and you think, okay, does my story idea tick off some of these boxes, okay? So I guess what I would say to you is always think of your story like it's real estate, all right? Real estate is a valuable commodity, okay? It's worth something. So make sure that you're using your real estate to its best value. So if you're going to be giving that real estate to someone in your story, they need to earn their place in your story, okay? Every word and every number that you use needs to earn a spot in your real estate. Every person that you quote in your story needs to earn that spot in your real estate, okay? Every quote that you use needs to earn its spot, and it has to be a worthwhile quote. And you have to make sure that you're just using the best part of that quote because your real estate is valuable. Okay, and that's it for me.
Wow, thank you, Steve. I think we were looking forward to many more slides, but thank you so much.
I didn't want to take up too much time, so.
Thank you so much. And maybe just before we switch to Raquel, would you also speak a little bit in terms of the experience of pitching in Canada? Is it any different from the Global South, what we're having here in the Global South?
Well, I would say that the main difference in Canada is that what I've noted, and I'm no expert, okay, so I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to pass myself off on an expert in African journalism and the way that the African media landscape operates. What I have noticed is that in Africa, there is a lot more journalism where the journalists need to go to the kinds of sources that we don't really use a lot here, funding sources I'm talking about. So, you know, in Africa, you know, there's a lot of grants available to journalists. There's a lot of NGOs that are providing support to journalism. And so, you know, my observation as an outsider is that, you know, the journalists in Africa are doing a lot more hustling with the kinds of organizations that we don't really have to deal with in Canada. If you're a journalist in Canada, you're approaching, you know, mainstream media outlets, whether that's, you know, a newspaper or a television station or a radio station. And there aren't a lot of these sort of, you know, NGO things like USAID, which, you know, rest in peace. You know, those types of things. And so for us, you know, you know exactly where you're going to be going. You're going to be going to, you know, the traditional media outlets. The difference in Canada is that, you know, what I've come to learn about the African situation is that, you know, a lot of the quote unquote, you know, standard mainstream media outlets are in fact, you know, quite partisan, perhaps owned by political parties, maybe don't have the reputation for being neutral. Whereas in Canada, you know, most of the media outlets are seen as being quite neutral. They're not owned by a political party. They're not specifically touting one party over another. So, you know, in some ways it's easier, you know exactly where you need to go. But, you know, the landscape here in Canada is just as challenged as it is in Africa. So I don't know if that helps or not.
Thank you. It does. It does. And I hope for the rest of the members listening in, it's good to hear the Global North experience. And as we compare it with us, thank you so much for that insight and also for the good points that you gave us in the slides. We will also shift gears now also internationally to Raquel, who's also joining us. She comes on board as an editor and tells us what editors are looking for, but we would also want to hear more about the experience from there, and also talking in regards to giving the voice to the Global South journalist. Welcome on board.
Hello. Hi. So yeah, I'm representing the other side, which so many freelancers struggle with, which is that wall that sometimes as editors represent in order to pitch a story. In our case, well, in the last couple of years, I've been specifically getting pitches from different African countries because our desk in El Pais newspaper focuses on global development. But in the past, I've also done a lot of editing work in different desks in different countries and continents. So I would say, I'm guessing the question is still broadly how to pitch the right way, right?
Yes. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. So I would start, first of all my respect to all you freelancers. I've actually never made a consistent living out of freelancing, and I've been in the newsroom for many years. So honestly, I very much admire the hustle and the work behind it. But if I dare to give some recommendations, I think first of all is be strategic about your pitching. I know how hard it is to do detailed pitches and how many doors you have to knock on before you get a yes. But I do believe that using more time preparing a pitch will actually give you like a higher success rate and will save you time on the long term. So first of all, of course, like Jackson, I think, mentioned, read. My media outlet is a print newspaper and online. You really just I think someone is.
Dana, please mute your mic. Dana, mute your mic. Dana, kindly mute your mic. Thank you.
Take a look at, well, in the case of my newspaper, it is a newspaper and media outlet mainly in Spanish language, but we work with English speaking and French speaking and Portuguese speaking freelancers. But Google Translate is your friend. Go on, take a look at the homepage of the social media of the website of the media outlet that you're pitching to, and get a vibe of like who you're pitching to, and definitely adapt your pitch consistently. Also, be smart about like what is this media outlet lacking, and I can tell you already, if we're talking about global north media outlets, it's always on the ground reporting, international analysis. Okay, I have my kid coming in the room, sorry. It's always on the ground reporting. International correspondences are scarce right now. International media outlets are not paying for permanent correspondence in most of the world, and specifically in Africa. So take advantage of that. You are on the ground. You can provide a local point of view. Media outlets are also once and for all transitioning to a point of view that focuses more on the local and not so much as on the outsider point of view. So you belong to the country usually where you're reporting on, or to the region where you're reporting on. Take advantage of that, because most media outlets do not have permanent correspondence or even consistent freelancing in those areas. Can you provide analysis by local experts? Can you give a fresh outlook on issues that are happening globally? You also have to be smart, and when you're pitching to international media outlets, to take your local or national story and give it a global angle. Why is this story written from Nairobi relevant to someone who's reading in Mexico City? Why and how? Then, of course, be also strategic about your efforts. I know how freelancers are not being paid very much for their work nowadays. Think about the possibility of taking one story and finding different angles to sell to different media outlets, but always be open and honest about it, because it has happened to all of us when we say yes to the story and then we see it published in several outlets at the same time. You can avoid all of that back and forth and probably the lack of the loss of trust if you're open about the fact that you need to make a story work, selling it to different media outlets, usually in different languages, which is something that I'm seeing a lot of freelancers do. Then be detailed in your pitches. What's the timeline for you to deliver this content? Does it require travel? Are you going to provide photos? How long do you think the story should be? Like I think Steve was mentioning, offering multimedia content is so valuable. Again, media outlets don't usually, they have this thirst for content. They have to feed not only their websites, but their newsletters, all of their social media channels. Maybe you are able to sell a story that's on print, and you're also able to sell a TikTok that comes with this story. And I'm sure a lot of editors will really appreciate you being forward and being proactive with this. And then, as last pieces of advice, be consistent. Don't disappear. Try and not get discouraged unless they're treating you badly. And find that balance between overwhelming the inbox of a desk, like in our case. It's probably not the most strategic thing to be pitching story every day, unless there are actual breaking news happening in your home country or in your city. But also don't go missing for years. Like your name, like Steve was mentioning, has to be present in your editor's mind, and in the future when they are, when it's the middle of August in Europe, like is in our case, and we have no stories, your name will probably pop in our minds, because we know that you can get the work done, and we know that you bring fresh angles. Yeah, and I think that's my advice.
Okay, thank you so much. I suppose we should all say thank you to all the panelists who are speaking, and I can see the question have started coming on board. I know we are lined up to have Catherine, but choosing to have a little bit of a difference so that we have the first session of the webinar on board together. So I would want us to consider the questions first, and then we can get on to Catherine, who's going to wind up. I can see a question posed by Pauline Nasimeu. How do you determine the rates for hiring a project? For example, if you've pitched story to Mongabe and she says she's directing the question to David Njagi. David, kindly come on board so that we are able to engage Pauline.
Yeah, thank you again. Basically, most of the news outlets that I've worked with, like Mongabe, they do have they put out the information out there that we are going to, when you pitch to the editor, they will tell you that we pay this amount, maybe per word we pay 50 US cents. Then maybe they will tell you that perhaps if it's a project that is going to take maybe a few days to go and report, they'll provide you with with a stipend. I think it's about that $5 for every day in the field, so that you can cover the cost for expenses like food and others, network. But yeah, most publications also are the ones which put out it's called what, put out the information there. They'll say we are looking for pitches, and we pay this amount of money for a project. Like if you go to the Freedom with Writing website, the newsletter Jackson was talking about, for every opportunity that the newsletter publishes there, they'll show you, they'll let you know that this is the amount we pay for a feature story. This is the amount we pay for maybe an opinion piece. This is the amount we pay for a news story. So it's always good to work with editors who have solicited content outside there. That is maybe they are looking for stories. They put out the information maybe like in LinkedIn or Twitter. They usually come with their rates, but for new publications, maybe for publications that don't put out the information there, after connecting with the editor, they will let you know that they will let you know how much they would be willing to pay, and maybe you feel like you should negotiate. You can maybe engage and come to an agreement on what maybe works best for you and for them. So I don't know if anyone else wants to chip in.
Any other person on that question?
Yeah, just to add on what David has said, so it differs from publication or organization to organization. So as David mentioned, for instance, for Mongabe, when you're pitching a story, they have a provision for doing a budget, a travel budget. So you send it together with your pitch. And then if that pitch is accepted by the editor, you have a window to also renegotiate, just in case depending on the number of days you will spend in the field reporting, or whether you will need a photographer, a videographer, whether you will need a fixer, a translator, all those issues. So you have to factor them when you are negotiating with the editor. So most of them, as David said, have a fixed rate of what they pay, especially for those who are starting. So if it's your first time working with them, they have a fixed rate. So maybe depending on the number of words of the story, depending on the content, is it a multimedia type of content you want to produce? That we also determine what they will pay you. But if it's an organization you've worked for quite some time, you have established your byline with them, then I think the rates might also get going up as you continue to engage them. But you, as a freelancer, you have a window of negotiating with your editor once that story pitch has been commissioned. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that additional information. I hope we are all listening and taking notes. Lenah, do you have anything to add on that before we switch to the next question? Lenah?
Yes, like for Gavi, for me, let me speak about Gavi. When you send your pitch, the editor will get back with a brief of how much they pay. And if they accept your pitch, they will also share a brief on the questions that you will tackle, because this one is more based on the immunization, vaccines, and tropical diseases. So they will get back to you with a brief of how much they pay. And also if you need more ideas on the areas you can check on. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all our Kenyan counterparts. We'll switch to the next question by David Monda. David addresses the question to Steve, and I guess even Raquel, you can be able to answer that. Do you see the difference in pitching politics, money, climate change in Canada versus US, with the rise in Trumpism and the decline of legacy media houses? Steve, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I need to be honest with you. I've been retired for almost 3 years now, so I might not be the best person to answer that question as to whether there's been a change in receptiveness, I guess, to those types of things. I mean, I also need to be honest with you. The last 25 years of my career I spent as an investigative reporter, so with a newspaper, so I didn't have to do a lot of pitching myself. So I'm not sure that I can give you the best answer. I guess what I would, maybe I can try to give you a different answer to a different question. I mean, if you were, for instance, trying to pitch, whether it's a story of, political or financial banking or climate change, environment, that type of thing, and you were thinking of maybe looking at the North American market, I guess, it's probably obvious to say this to you, but you need to figure out a way to make your story relevant to that specific audience. And so if you are expecting a Canadian publication or a Canadian broadcaster to be interested in your pitch, the first question that they're going to ask you is, why does my readership or why does my viewership care about this story? So if you can't answer that question, then you need to rework it, or you need to come up with a better idea, or you need to come up with an approach that satisfies your target audience. So, I guess what I would say is look around your landscape, whatever your landscape is, wherever it is that you're doing your work. If you want to pitch it to somebody in Canada, find a Canadian connection. Okay, so I'll give you a very tangible example. One of the people that was supposed to be part of this discussion today was Christian Locka from He is the founder and operator of a site called the Museba project, which is based in Cameroon. But he also has a stable of reporters who are based in the Democratic Republic of Congo, specifically in the Lubumbashi area. And Lubumbashi is the largest city in the heart of what would be considered the Congo's mining sector. And so, I was speaking to some of his reporters there in Lubumbashi, and, as it turns out, there are some Canadian mining companies that are operating in the DRC. And so I said to one of them, well, do any of these Canadian companies employ child laborers? And he said, well, I'm pretty sure that they do. I said, well, there's a story for you. To him, that wasn't necessarily a big story because it's just a fact of life there in the DRC. Mines use child labor. In fact, a lot of times families want their children to work in the mines, as horrific as that might sound, because that means that the children can bring in some extra income to the family. And as I said to this person who really wasn't thinking of this as a story, I said, well, let me tell you something. In Canada, if we were to read a story about a Canadian mining company using child laborers in the DRC, that would be a huge story here in Canada. So again, that's a specific example of thinking about something and then trying to relate it to whatever target audience you think you might be able to sell your story to. So, if you're based in Kenya, look around for Canadian companies or Canadian people or Canadian operations or whatever, and then look at ways that there might be a story. It doesn't have to be a negative story necessarily. I mean, maybe they're doing great things in a community. Maybe they're building wells to bring clean water to people, whatever it is. But, and I'm not just, I'm using Canada as an example. I live in Canada, but, if it's the States, look for American interests, look for British interests, look for Spanish interests, so think about the rest of the world, but how the rest of the world might be there. If you were part of the presentations that I gave back in February to the AFJ in Nairobi, I was using the example of China's influence in Kenya and China's influence in Africa in general. China has a huge presence there, and with the United States pulling out and reducing its funding, it creates a vacuum. And as you know, nature abhors a vacuum, and so I'm sure the Chinese are going to run in and fill that vacuum. So think about those kinds of things. Think about tangible examples of that, and then think about how you can relate that to an audience. Okay, using that example of China, if you wanted to pitch to large American publications, you might be thinking about how you can explain to an American audience how their actions are creating a vacuum in Africa, and that vacuum is going to get filled with Chinese interests. So again, always be thinking about your target audience. Sorry, I probably took up way too much time with that explanation, and I apologize.
No, it's okay, Steve. Thank you. We are here to learn. And thank you for that you're telling us to be open-minded in terms of the kind of stories that we're doing. Also, I guess you're telling us to be able to network widely. We go beyond the Kenyan borders and ask ourselves who's around us so that we can be able to see the wonderful work that is being done and being able to sell it. Maybe before you're off and before we get into Raquel, is to the second question, any advice on protection of sources, maybe especially from the Global North experience, and then we can also ask Raquel to reply that, then we get on to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the landscape in North America, in Canada specifically, is much, much different than it is in Africa. I have great respect for, my African colleagues, especially those that do investigative work, because they face a lot of dangers and challenges that, I never had to face in my career. I did investigative journalism for 25 years. You know, I dealt with a lot of, you know, bad people and reported a lot on bad things that bad people did, but never ever once did I ever have to fear for my life. I never once had to worry about, you know, somebody beating me up or harassing me or threatening me or intimidating me or my family. You know, it's a much different landscape here in Canada and in North America. So, you know, it would be trite for me to try to say to African journalists who do that type of work, you know, how to tell them how to conduct their business, because they deal with challenges that I never ever had to deal with. You know, I guess the only general things that I would say about, you know, protecting your sources is that you need to be upfront with your sources about, you know, what it means to offer that kind of protection. If you're going to give somebody anonymity, if you're not going to reveal their identity as part of your work, then you and your source need to be clear about what that means. So does that mean that you're going to keep them anonymous at any and all costs? So let me step back for a second. It's easy for journalists to say, you know, somebody says to you, I've got some information, I'll give it to you, but you have to keep my name out of it. Okay, I can't be associated with this story. And journalists are really quick to say, yeah, sure, no problem. Don't worry about that. I'll never reveal your name, without giving it a whole lot of thought. But you do have to give it a lot of thought, and you do have to think it through to sometimes the conclusions that you don't want to anticipate, which is, okay, you've said to that source, I'll protect you. I won't give out your name. I won't reveal your name. What happens if you get sued? What happens if you get sued and you have to go up onto the witness stand, and under oath, you're being asked to identify the source that provided you that information? And if you don't provide that information, you're going to get tossed into jail for contempt of court. Are you still going to be prepared to protect the anonymity of that person? So if you are, great, you're a very noble person. Okay, but not everyone is prepared to do that. So you need to have those kinds of hypothetical conversations at the front end before you just willy-nilly jump into saying, yeah, sure, no problem, I'll protect your anonymity, don't worry about it. Okay, so, you know, it's something that you need to give more thought to than just, you're so desperate to get the information that you'll say anything you want. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. I think you've really given us a lot of insight. Maybe Raquel, you can be able to answer this question by David. For investigative stories that invoke risk to the freelancer, how can personal life insurance be factored into a contract, or any other comments towards what Steve was answering? Go ahead.
Well, that's a very good and complicated question to answer, I would say. I do believe that depending on the media outlet, but like it varies depending on the company that you're going to be contracting for. But I do believe that currently in a lot of media outlets, you will not be entitled to life insurance or like work insurance, which is a very serious problem when you're reporting in issues that require either travel or the risk for lawsuits, for example. I do know for experience that in the past, like I'm just thinking of our most recent experience when we had story where we got threatened by some legal action. Basically, like us editors were the ones who kind of like stepped up and with the help of like the legal team in our newspaper kind of like assumed responsibility for it. But I do believe that it enters a very gray area where, like, depending on the particular story and the company, you may or may not be well covered. I think a very important, like maybe the only useful and actual thing that I can actual advice that I can give is like, look for the networks, look for the associations such as this one, but also other groups that protect journalists and rights. Frontline Defenders, for example, it's an NGO that works with not only journalists but also human rights defenders. The Committee to Protect Journalists, really like sadly, like the community that you're gonna get, you're gonna have to look for it, because you are, you do as a freelance have the freedom, but you're also assuming a lot of risks, and for which I always say, like, I honestly really admire, and especially in this climate where media outlets are cutting their budgets, politically journalism is getting trickier and trickier to exercise, and you don't always get rewarded financially or reputationally for the very risky work that you're doing.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much. Anything else you want to add before I switch to the next session? Okay. Thank you. I think we are at a very good point where we're talking about risks, we're talking about safety, we're talking about how do we protect our sources, and therefore it becomes a little bit more personal, and we have to be able to understand which kind of world we are working in. And this is the opportunity that I give to Catherine. If you look at the charts, I've already given out her bio in terms of what they deal with, but a lot on safety training in terms of the newsrooms and also for freelance journalists. Catherine, I'm sure you're ready for us. We are giving you the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Carol. I have a presentation to share. So let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see, but you can make it bigger.
Okay, great. So view slideshow better?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. So thank you so much for joining us today. I know I've seen some of the names, they're familiar, so good to see you again, and thank you for this opportunity. So I'll just skip the introduction because the bio had been shared earlier. So a culture of safety, ACOS Alliance. ACOS Alliance was created 2014. This was just after the brutal murder of two freelance journalists, James Foley and Stephen Sotloff. That name always is a mouthful for me. So this happened in Syria, 2014. So they were kidnapped and brutally murdered. And there was a lot of buzz, there was a lot of media publicity surrounding the murders. So this led to the creation of a Culture of Safety Alliance, which is a global coalition of more than 170 news organizations and press freedom NGOs. And I'm sure for those of you who know, or those of you who doesn't know, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
yes, we can. Go ahead. Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So yeah, so this is an association of so many newsrooms, NGOs, all working together to champion for safe and responsible journalism practices globally. So our mission is very simple: to make sure that no one is left behind when it comes to safety. And this all started with the freelance journalists in mind. So we started first by creating the freelance journalist safety principles. They are accessible on our website. And these principles are basically were created to make sure that newsrooms address all the risks that freelance journalists face while they're in the field. So we have 3 pillars that support our work. The first one being coordination and collaboration. We realize that everything we do, we have to do it with partners. ACOS is a very, very small team of about four employees, but everything else we do in collaboration with newsrooms, in collaboration with NGOs, to make sure all these best practices are implemented within the newsroom. And our biggest activity under coordination and collaboration is the annual safety meeting that's normally held once every year. It's a working meeting. We bring all the key players of journalism in different parts of the world to come together and address the different safety and security challenges that they are facing in their regions. And then the other pillar is practical safety initiatives. And this is where most of you know me from. We have many programs designed to respond to journalist safety. The difference between ACOS and most of the other partners working in journalism safety is that ACOS is more on the preventative side, and we have our partners working on crisis response. Most of you know CPJ, IWMF, Freedom of the Press Foundation. So yeah, we together come up with different programs that address journalist safety, and all of them are grounded on the freelance journalist safety principles. And then the other last pillar is advocacy, like here, and we advocate. Our advocacy is mainly on the newsroom level. So it's not advocacy, the traditional definition of lobbying governments and regional blocs, but this is advocacy within journalism, within the newsroom, to make sure the journalist is not left behind in terms of safety. So we also create different resources. We have resources for editors, for journalists, and we also have a hub where you can take our free online safety course. Some of you have gone through it. It's open to everyone. It takes about 3 to 4 hours, but basically gives you a basis of what it means to commission safely. The course is designed for editors, but can be taken by anyone. We highly recommend freelance journalists to take this online course, because then it gives you the language to be able to advocate for yourself when you're engaging your editor, you're being commissioned, and it ranges from everything from physical, digital, legal, psychosocial. Just gives a little bit of understanding of all those aspects of safety. So whenever you have a moment, please have a look at it. When it comes to Kenya, we've also partnered with different members of our signatories. As you all know, the Association of Freelance Journalists is a signatory of ACOS Alliance, and that's why I am here today, to just let you know that we are a partner and we stand behind the safety of journalists. And earlier this year, we also had a HIFAT training, hostile environment and first aid training with Africa Uncensored. And further down the line, we obviously will organize another webinar to go a little bit in depth, get to answer your questions on safety. So whenever you have a moment, please share your thoughts, what you'd like to be covered with either Mary or Winnie. And then from there, we can organize an in-depth training. If you'd like to know more about our work, you can follow us on our social media handles. And upcoming in August, we also have a training focus for editors. I'll be sharing the link on the chat. Please share with your editor if you like the editor to take part of the program. This is, again, part of our efforts to make sure that the safety conversation is not just left with the journalist. It goes everywhere, with the managers, with the editors, and in that way we create a culture of safety throughout the system, not just on the field, but even within the newsroom. Yeah, so that's it from me. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I think we always say, save the best for the last. Not that the others did not do well, they did so well. Thank you for that. I know there's somebody who's asking what time we are winding up. We still have a couple of minutes to go. We wanted to wind up at 4:40, but if we can also quicken the questions and everything else. I know some are tired, some need to go home. We can finish at 4:30. So any questions or comments to Catherine? I've already given out a link to their website. Check them out. If you're involved with FJ activities, you'll meet her a lot with us. Any questions, keep them coming. The mic is open for the next 2 minutes before we get either Winnie or Mary to close up. Gideon. Gideon, please, I know you're selling avocados somewhere. Kindly mute your mic. Any questions or comments to Catherine in terms of safety, in terms of what the organization does? Going once, going twice. No brave person, going thrice. Okay, the hammer is down. I think.
Thank you, Carol.
They've understood your message. So yeah. Okay, any other questions or Japan and what Ali? Mary to wind up, or Winnie, because we were supposed to have Winnie speak at the beginning, but she was in a noisy place. Mary, go ahead.
Hello. Okay. I think Winnie seems to be busy, but all in all, I think this has been a very productive session, and thank you everybody, to the audience, to the speakers, Lenah, Jackson, David, Steve, Raquel, and Catherine. Thank you so much. And this is just a beginning. We plan to have a series of similar webinars where we will be tackling different issues affecting freelancers, where also safety and security will come in the subsequent webinars. So from us, this is a big thank you. And I believe if anybody has a question that they would love answered later on, they can send it to us, and then we can pass over it to Steve or Raquel or Catherine. So thank you so much, and enjoy your evening or your morning, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Catherine. She's given a link. Please check it out as you exit the room. Thank you so much to the panelists. We are very grateful for all the information we've gathered. Have a lovely evening and good morning wherever you're coming from. Bye to everybody.
Bye-bye.